Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's MISys Tips and Tricks video. As promised from last week, we are continuing on with our series on the MRP module of MISys. So as you might recall, last week we talked about the different methods of running MRP. We discussed a single step run versus a three-step run. And while we were going through that, we touched on a few things, such as the different demand signals. And this week, we want to make sure we get a little bit more into that and identify what those signals are for each of these item groups. And when I am talking about item groups, I'm referring to the item groups that we are going to be running the three steps of MRP, which are the finished goods, the intermediate or sub-assemblies, depending whether you're a discrete manufacturer or a process manufacturer, and then all our purchased items. So when we're talking about finished goods, the demand signal that we are talking about is really coming to us in three different forms. The first and most obvious is sales orders. These are orders that we receive from our customers. They are with a certain shipping date, and we enter them into our QuickBooks or Sage, whatever our accounting system is, and MISys is able to pull these orders in and create manufacturing orders against them. By the date that they're due to be shipped, the manufacturing order will be scheduled to be completed on that day. Now, another signal can be sales forecast. And this is not an actualized order from the client or the customer, but rather what our sales department is estimating our sales going to be in the near and maybe not so near future. And we can enter this as well into MISys for finished goods step as one of the demand signals. And then finally, there is what MISys refers to as shortage basis. This is our safety stock, floor stock, whatever you might be calling it internally. This is the amount of stock that we want to keep regardless or independent of any of the other demand signals. So even if there is no sales orders or there is no sales forecast, we say, I always want to have hundreds of this item on the floor. So I can set that as my minimum quantity in MISys for that specific item in their item master file. And that will be my shortage basis that I run my MRP for. And MISys will always make sure there is that 100 pieces or whatever the unit of measure is available on the floor in addition to the sales orders and the sales forecast. The next step is the intermediaries and the sub-assemblies. Once we ran the finished goods step for the MRP module, we have created manufacturing orders. Once those manufacturing orders are in released status, as opposed to inactive, then these finished good manufacturing orders automatically constitute a demand signal for MISys for their sub-assemblies, for their intermediaries, for their lower level BOM items. And these are the production orders that are in the system. MISys wants to make sure that it can supply the required subs or intermediaries for the finished good manufacturing or production orders. So that's already automatically in the system. But we might want to add on to that a shortage basis, the same concept as with the finished goods. This is some level of floor stock, a safety stock that we want to keep, whether there is actually any demand coming from production orders or not. And finally, we might think, well, I want to actually keep more stock of these subs and intermediaries because maybe I have delayed differentiation. I build everything to the sub level and I keep stock of that. When the finished good comes, I just do a very minimal processing, maybe just slap some labels on it to differentiate the product to the finished good level and then ship it out. So then it might make sense for me to keep more stock for the intermediary and sub in addition to the production orders. And I might want to do it above and beyond the shortage basis by including sales forecast. So, and then the next step, of course, is the PO, as I call it, which is purchase orders, which covers all the purchase items. In this case, again, the production orders that are in the release status in the system already constitute a demand signal automatically. MISys sees all the requirements there and wants to purchase them if they are needed, if they're not available, readily available on hand. And we can enter all other signals as well. Sales orders, sales forecast, and shortage basis can all be entered for the purchase order step as of unique and separate demand signals. When we are identifying these demand signals for each of the three steps, one of the most important things to make sure is that the demand is not duplicated. What I mean by that is if you are running your purchase order items, for example, and the sales orders have already been entered into the system and the finished goods have already pulled those, created manufacturing orders for it, and MISys will automatically buy against those. Now, if you're going to include your sales orders or your sales forecast, you need to make sure you don't include the same time period that a previous step had already included and created, say, a production order for it. In this case, again, for if you're looking at a purchase order items, if we have already production orders in the system due to the sales orders that were entered for the month of May, if I'm going to include sales forecast, what I want to make sure is that sales forecast starts from end of May. And all the sales forecast that was referring to the month of May is not included, so I am not duplicating my data. This is a very important point in each of the steps to make sure your demand signals are not duplicated so that we don't purchase or manufacture more than what is needed. I hope this helps you use MISys more effectively, and we will continue next week with the third segment of our MRP installations.